Hello and welcome to the Wise Leader Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Firm Faith Watson. Today, we are privileged to have Professor Shermaine Barrett, and she will be sharing her amazing story and provide us with some practical words of wisdom to help us on our leadership journey. Professor Barrett, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Well, my name is Shermaine Barrett, as you said, and I am from Jamaica. I was born in one of the parishes that's described as the garden parish of my country, St. Anne. And then later on in my teen years, I moved into the capital, Kingston, for study and work. So here I am in Kingston. And so currently I am Dean of the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies, the unit in which I studied when I first came to Kingston. Can you imagine?
Yes, and I know that you have a wealth of experience. And viewers, I have to share this with you that Professor Barrett was my director in Jamaica at the University of Technology, Jamaica, when I served there. And it was a great experience to work with her. And she was instrumental in my leadership journey. And so, Professor Barrett, it's an honor to be talking to you today after all these years. And I'm just looking forward to learning more from you. So thanks again.
And I'm delighted to talk with you.
Great.
Yes.
So the title of our conversation today is Life is a Journey. Why did you choose that title?
Wow, because it's exactly that. When you look at my journey from, as I said, I was born in one of the parishes, the Garden Parish. But in Jamaica, we like to talk about who is from rural and who is from the city. And so it is indeed a journey and has been a journey for me from that rural parish in St. Anne to Kingston and other parts of the world. And so my journey took me from a little girl in Brownstown, St. Anne, all the way to where I am now. And it has been an exciting journey, exhilarating journey, journey of pain, journey of tears, journey of laughter. Isn't that what life is about? It comes with its ups and it comes with its downs.
Yes, yes. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about your journey to help us on our leadership journey. So Psalms 75 verses 6 and 7 indicates that promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He puts down one and sets up another. So could you share with us some pivotal moments in your journey to help us understand how our Heavenly Father orchestrated your career?
Well, Faith, when I reflect on my journey, and as you said, pivotal moments, I must go back to how I moved from St. Anne to Kingston. And sometimes when God is working his plans out, it doesn't look that way. If you remember the story of Joseph, he was thrown in a pit. But all of that, God used it. And he orchestrated aspects of it to lead to where he wanted Joseph to be. I say that because when I was to come to Kingston, leave the rural area to come to the city, my mother would not have it. But thank God, I had an aunt who was living in Kingston at the time, living and working, and she came by and tried to talk some sense into my mother. She still would not have it. But I remember us packing my things and with tears saying goodbye to my mommy because I've got to go on to study. And there began the journey. When I came into Kingston, I am now in education, but I had no intention. Can I say that again? No intention to be a teacher, to be in education. I wanted to do radiology. But of course, at the time, you needed to have what in Jamaica we call A levels, and I had O levels, and I decided not to do the advanced level. And so when I got to the university to do radiology, I was told that I could do radiology, but I would be limited and could only do it practice in Jamaica and the Caribbean. And I didn't think that was a good option. So I started searching, and my search led me to College of Arts, Science and Technology. And so that was a pivotal moment because, as I said, I had no intention of doing teaching, but that program that I got into had two options or two pathways available to those who study. I was being trained as a teacher, but I was being trained in mechanical technology. And so that opened up this whole thing of education to me. And so having finished my diploma, that first level tertiary, I entered into industry. But I did not enjoy that. So of course I was using the mechanical side of my training, and I got good experience. I was manager of the technology unit, but I was not enjoying it. And so I moved. In fact, I would spend days just daydreaming of leaving this place. And so my path took me to Kingston College, one of our secondary level high schools for boys in Jamaica. And there I pursued my path using the teaching arm of my training. And so that went for some while. And then I struggled again because, as I said to you, I wasn't interested in teaching. Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? So I went into do some studies in human resource development, and I loved it. So I went off to the university, did my first degree and in ed admin. And there I developed and honed my skills in leadership. And here comes an interesting moment, because an entity, a particular organization, came to the university looking for somebody with strong writing. Not that, they just wanted students who would be graduating shortly with strong writing skills. And because I had worked with the placement unit, they knew of me. And so I was one that was asked to interview. And so it was my writing skills. So to any young person listening, I would say, your abilities shine from early, and people see them and they recognize them, and you will be rewarded for them. And so that took me in the development world. And so I was hired to design projects and to write projects, and projects for USAID, for the European Union, for the Canadians to be funded. And that was an exciting period of my life. And then I left there and established my own consultancy in training and career development. And then my husband decided he wanted to do his master's. And so I should back up. While I was in this organization, designing projects, I was director of fund development. I got the opportunity to work, because in that entity, they looked at two things on my CV that was unique to those in there. It's an environmental organization, but I came with this mechanical background, and then I came with the people development background with my training, my competencies in teacher education, teacher training, and my experience as a teacher. And so they drew on that. So part of my role was to organize and to run development programs in leadership for persons in the communities. And so that developed some other skills in me. And so I was confident now to move out on my own and establish my own consultancy in training and development. And that organization was one of my first clients to do their training and development programs. But that was exciting. And in that period, my husband decided he was going off to Ecuador to study. And of course, my belief is when I got married, I said, wherever thou goest, I would go. So he wasn't going to leave me here. So we ended up in Ecuador for a year. And that's where I got pregnant and had my daughter. And then when I came back to Jamaica, I thought I'm going straight back into my consultancy. Wasn't to be, because it took a while. You know, when you come out of your country and you come back in, it takes a while to navigate. And so during that time while I was waiting, I was approached to say, at the University of Technology, Jamaica, which is the now, where we are now, that's the name for the College of Arts, Science and Technology. Before that was a college, now it is a university under this new name. And so I was told that they wanted persons to, they were looking for someone and with my qualifications. And so I applied, I interviewed, and I got started. And so that set me off on a whole new trajectory in academia. I think I'll stop there for now to tell you some of the things that have happened to take me to where I am. What a journey. Isn't that a journey?
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Yeah. So, and it's good that you stopped, because it's just interesting to see your story from you coming from the country in Jamaica. Your mother was a little bit hesitant, but then you had an aunt that stepped in. So we can see how God used people there.
Exactly.
We see how he helped to hone your skills in writing. So he was setting you up to get this unique position to help people in various parts of the world. And it's just a blessing to just listen to your journey. So when you came back from Ecuador, you thought you would go right back into your consultancy, but that was not the case. You were approached by someone from the University of Technology, Jamaica. So could you tell us then what happened afterwards?
Well, I accepted. Originally, I remember I came back with my daughter, and she was now, when I got to UTech, she was 8 months old. And that too was God, because why I wanted to go in my consultancy is that I think I could manage my time. I was the manager of my time that way. And so being at UTech gave me some amount of flexibility as well. And that was useful, very, very useful. But my husband was also, and still is, incredibly supportive. And so that was good for me. I say that against the background that I was still fighting, kicking, screaming. I do not want to be in education. And so my mother-in-law would sit with me. She used to lecture here as well. And so she had a little heart string attached to the university, it would seem like. So she would encourage me all the time, Shermaine, just stick with it. Just stay with it. Give it 2 years, give it 3 years. But you know, Faith, I was so involved and so delighted by the opportunities of the development world and how you are touching lives, how you are moving. There is no 2 days look alike. And you were able to design projects and impact lives. And I thought that the academic world was too slow and too bureaucratic, and I could not manage that. But there are different people God would send along my way. And one of those persons was, can't remember his name, Professor Addy. Can't call the whole name, but he was an African who was responsible for graduate studies and research. And I went and I just sat with him and I told him my frustration and that I came here to do research. I didn't really want to be lecturing, all of this story. And then he said to me, set your own path. That was life-changing. He said, establish your own research agenda and walk in that path. And I left his office that day determined. Because you see, my master's was in adult education. And here at UTech, they were pulling on my technical skills and my education training skills, but they weren't using my adult education. And that's what my heart was pumping around. And in the development world, I was able to design programs for adults. And that excited me. And I thought I was lacking. But each time I made an attempt to move, it just never worked at all. And so I just had to stay. And as I stayed with the end of my first year, by the second year, the dean of the faculty approached me and said, I would love you to take over the leadership of a program. And so that was my first thing. So that's, I went 2002, and by 2004, I was in this post. That's when I met you, Faith, and worked closely with you because you were my admin support in that role. Excellent administrative support. And I really, really learned and benefited a lot from you there. You supported me at that time. I was always very proud and spoke about the kind of support you gave me in helping me to navigate this new role that you understood already, because you were there when others were there. And I really appreciate that. And I want it to be said, because we have to realize that as leaders, it's not just leaders who impact leaders. Those we supervise impact us either positively or negatively. And so you were one of those persons who really helped me to dig my teeth into that role and to really demonstrate my leadership and my competencies in that area. And so I walked through that until about what, 3 years later? Wow, so 3 years later. So that's 7 years total. I was now not even in the country. I was overseas, coming back into the country, and I was told that the head of school wanted to speak to me. I said, I'm coming back to work. What is the rush? She will see me when I get there. And so I gave that message, and they delivered the message, and she said, well, okay, I'd like to speak to you. To cut it short, what she was doing is to recommend that I apply for the position of head of school. What is wrong with this lady? I thought, she is setting me up. You know, in academia, you must pay your price. Huh? You must pay your dues and move. So what is this? So I avoided her. I said no, and I avoided her. I avoided her until one day she heard me on the outside of her office, and she said, is that Shermaine? I said, yes. She said, come on in here. And she took me and sat me down and said to me why she felt that I was the best candidate in her mind to pick up this role, or to apply for and to take up the role. And so I gave it thought, and the day before the interview closed, I said to her, I've applied. I prayed. I sought God. I reminded him that this is not where I thought I would be. But he reminded me that this is where I'd like you to be at this moment. And of course, you went through, did the interview, and got the position. And I functioned as dean, as head of school then. And then halfway in that way, I knew that God was stirring in me now to do my PhD studies. And so I started that and completed that process. And then coming back in, I was again encouraged to apply for the post of dean, which I really didn't have as a, you know, when you have these trajectories for your life, and this wasn't really on my trajectory. But leadership in academia was on my trajectory. So it's not that leadership in academia was not there, but not dean. But God saw otherwise, and so he opened the door, and here I am.
Wow. It's interesting because initially when you came and you were more interested in dealing with adults, training adults, and so on. And Then you got the leadership position to direct the program. And then you were approached to serve as head of school. Didn't that seem to be taking you closer? I know it's not exactly what you had in mind, but when you were approached for head of school, wasn't that taking you closer to more dealing with adults? Wasn't that taking you closer? But you avoided it. You are still avoiding it.
Yes, because my notion of working with adults, it was not in that very formal setting. Because my master's training had me, and where I really honed those skills was working in the communities. And so I felt that that's where I should be. But God had other plans. He really wanted to, I think, streamline me and to allow me to impact education more broadly, because not only was I education at a university, but I was placed in the faculty where we are training teachers and principals and educational leaders. So you are impacting the next generation. So you see, that's the vision with God. It's always next generation. It doesn't stop with us. But my understanding of how God works with us was about you becoming the best of who you are. And I'm learning more and more. He's not about you becoming the best who you are, full stop. The best of who you are for the next generation. Because as one of my spiritual mothers would say, God sees in generations. And so he looks in generation, he plans in generation, he makes decisions for generations. And here was he preparing me to impact hundreds of young people in this way. Of course, if I was in the communities, I'd be impacting, pockets of people. And when you educate one, it can touch many. But here am I educating teachers who will themselves touch many, many more. And so even as I'm speaking to you, the reality of that is dawning on me, that God was doing what he knows my passion is, and that is to impact my nation. And one of the key ways to impact your nation is through education.
Wow. Amazing.
You see, you destroy the education system and you really destroy the nation. There are two key sociologists call them what? But I'm not remembering the term, but two entities, two organizations, the family and school or education, that are fundamental to developing a society. And God was putting me in a place. And then he said, well, okay, I'm not done. You are going to direct what happens. And I want you to know that my best years at UTech was as head of school at the time. I'm now understanding, yes, how the deanship works. Let me just tell you though, why I was hesitant to go into deanship is that of all the things that you can do in academia, program planning is what I love. And as head of school, that is your role. Your role is to lead the development of programs in your school. I felt that the dean was outside of that and was only administrative. Having come into the role, I realized that's not so, because the programs, the direction of the faculty is given by the dean, along with her management team. So for example, right now, part of my vision is to build what we call programs to impact the creative industries. Now, when I put that out, my heads of school, my program directors now design programs along that way. So I thought I was wise. I'm very intelligent. I pray a lot. So I thought my finger was on the pulse. And so I was pushing against the pricks while God is trying to pull me somewhere else, which is where I actually end up, but with a lot of fighting.
Wow. It's amazing. What I also noticed about your journey is that you were invited for an interview to UTech. You were invited to apply for the head of school. And those are like invitation. You can know that it's really God, even when you do not understand the plan. So I think that's amazing. Somebody might be listening and saying, wow, that's almost sounds like a fairy tale. But so let me ask you this next question, because and it might be awkward for you to answer, but I'm still going to ask it so that we can learn from you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some things that you think that God may have used to promote you? For example, what are some things that people tend to appreciate about you, or have even said or noted about you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that too, God has been teaching me that it is okay for you to speak about the strengths and the things he has gifted you with. If he has gifted you, then it is not excellent. It's not the excellent way to hide it. So I am learning to be bold about speaking about that. And from I was a young girl, I remember my mother's friend saying, she is such a leader. As a young girl, leading Bible studies, being president of a GLOW, which is a woman's international women's organization, Christian women's organization, people would always say, your leadership skills are so strong. So that I know and could appreciate. And then I've learned to appreciate my visionary skills. And I want to, because of the context in which we are speaking, I can say that I remember receiving a word from the Lord that says, part of my gifting is the ability to have a panoramic view of things, which is what a visionary does. Having a panoramic view of things, that means you see broadly where things are and how they are, and then you are able to make decisions. A colleague of mine, and maybe a mentee, academic mentee, would say, he describes me as a divergent thinker. And that one who goes out and sees the opportunities, take them in, and can pull the skills to accomplish that thing. So another strength that I think I have, that I've honed over the years, developed and honed, is the ability to match activity to skills, to people who come with those kinds of skills. And I think I am, well, I shouldn't say I think, I know I'm growth oriented. And I think that's what has driven my desire to work in the development field. Whether it's through formal education or non-formal, it is that I am fascinated by the potential of education to change a life. And there again, Faith, is a struggle I had with formal education, because in formal education, you don't immediately see how what you do change a life. In the non-formal world, you can almost immediately see how your work took someone out of poverty, how your work changed the trajectory of a community. And so I think the immediacy of the outcome is what stimulated me. Oh. And so I'm even as I speak, I'm gaining greater appreciation for some of the reasons that I would have fought so hard earlier. So I'm very growth oriented, and people are able to relax around me. I make it my point of duty to have people relax around me. I do not like to be uptight. And I feel people love that. They love to be valued. They love to be seen as important within the context. And those are some of the things. I'm certain others would say other things, but those are some of the things that come to mind.
Wow. So you are a visionary thinker. You're a divergent thinker. You match activities to skills. You're growth oriented. You are now able to see the potential that education has to impact individuals. And you love when people are able to relax around you. These are important qualities. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. So closely tied to this question, could you also share with us some leadership lessons or words of wisdom that you have learned along your journey that or have helped you along your journey?
I'm going to start with one of those that I have learned most recently. And it is learning to listen and not draw conclusions based on the first person who would come to you. So in my capacity as dean of the faculty, a number of issues come to me. It might come up through the program director, head of school, or it may come from another avenue. And sometimes I found that the first person who would come to me, oh, it is so convincing. It sounds, oh my gosh, this is wrong. We have got to fix this. However, when my ability to dig and kicks in, and I then ask for a meeting with the other party who might be involved, then I get another side to the same problem. And I realized, oh my gosh, I was so concerned about it from this angle, but here is another angle. And wow, how could I make that earlier decision given what I now know? And so I have learned to step back and give myself time. So it's not always the right thing to be quick with your decision. Just this morning, I wrote to a colleague and I said, the Bible says, in quietness and confidence, you will find strength. And so I have learned to be quiet. Just step back, gather the information, step back, be quiet, and then evaluate. So I have found that it's important to listen and not draw conclusions too early.
Yeah, you know what you just said reminds me of the Bible verse. It's in Proverbs 18. It says, the first to present his case seems right till another comes forward and questions him.
Oh my gosh, Proverbs what, 18?
Proverbs 18 verse 17.
I didn't know that was in the Bible. Thank you.
The first to state his case seems right.
Wow.
Different versions says different things.
Wow, thank you, Faith. Thank you. Wow. So there you have the Holy Spirit teaching me again.
Yeah, there are a couple Bible verses that speaks to that fact.
Wow. Wow. Yes. So the other point is working with person's strength. And every time I say this, I have to tell how I got there. So as I said, I was working with an organization, development organization, the Jamaican Conservation and Development Trust. I hesitated because I am now president of the Jamaican Council for Adult Education. So I tend to mix them from time to time. So, and as I said, my role as director of fund development was to write projects, but I also managed projects. And so I had a team that was working with me on one of these projects. And there were 4 of us, myself and 3 other persons, 3 development workers out in the field. So we have to write reports. And so they need to write reports. But one young lady was sharp. I could get my reports anytime, on time, well written. The other 2 Oh, they really struggled. One would give me in PowerPoints, in little points. And then the other one just couldn't come up with it. It took very long. It took very long. And boy, prayer is a good thing. So I always manage with prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to the Lord and I prayed and I asked, how do I? And one day we were in a meeting and I thought to the young lady who would do the reports, I said, would you be okay in pulling the reports of all three together? Just writing their individual reports, because they are from 3 different regions. So she couldn't write the reports for everybody. So I said, if they just give you maybe in an oral format or put down the points, and she said, yes. And after that, I got my reports. Then in looking at all 3, the one who could not come up with the report, oh, she was fantastic in organizing and mobilizing the community. So if I said I wanted to meet community X, she would go out, and when I get to that place, there are 100 persons in the room. That was her skill. So in any area then, any of the other 2 development workers areas we wanted to have a meeting, she would be the one to pull that together. The third person, when we would do our development workshops, she was my go-to. Logistics, ensuring that the place was ready, ensuring lunch was there, that was her strength. And so once I recognized that, we became a strong team because I just pulled on their strengths. This was in 1998, 99 thereabout. From that time forward, I always assign tasks based on person's strengths. So that says there needed to be some other characteristic, and it's the ability to spend time to know your staff. So I talk with my staff. I listen to what they say informally, just listening. And then I hear, I was in a session one day, I was asked to lead the revisioning of the school, not as the head of school, but just because of my experience as head of school. And there was one young lady who, every time we were doing the thing, she would be mapping out something and drawing. And I said, and then the administrative support couldn't make it. And I called on her, one of my colleagues, she's member of faculty. And I said, would you put the notes together? And she said, yes. And by the end of the meeting, within half an hour, the notes were there. I said, girl, you are something else. I want you to do my notes all the time. And she said, yes. But in addition, anything that needed a graphic, she was able to design it. So of course, she was my right hand after that, because I thought, my, what strength. So being able to identify person's strengths is very, very important. And then if I might pull on another one, it's demonstrating care for the well-being of those you lead. And this, I am learning more, and was forced to learn and to consider it more during the COVID period. Because Faith, I'm very resilient. I am adaptable. So I just move from one thing to the next. I really do that. So I believe people are like that. But I had to back up and say, no, they are not all like that. And every time I would do something that would demonstrate that care, the feedback I would get was so positive that it said to me, give attention to the socio-psychological well-being of those you lead. And I guess because I have been trained as a counselor, I also believe that being confidential and trustworthy is important. It's not always not always easy. But, and what do I mean by that? Because especially if you're having to deal with a conflict, you are trying to hold some things in confidence, but you have to release some things in order to aerate the problem. and to be able to deal with that. And so for those things, the next lesson I've learned, this is my life lesson. It is leaning on God for wisdom. As a young girl, I was impressed by Solomon asking God for wisdom. And I started asking for wisdom. And I know that his wisdom and his counsel is what causes people to say, I am a strong leader. And I can say that because I have been thinking and thinking about my leadership style, and I had to come down to say I'm pragmatic. Why am I pragmatic? Because pragmatics mean you respond to the situation. And I have been bold now to say I take a pragmatic approach to leadership because I have to go to God first. And I have to find out what is his take on this situation. And Faith, I mean everything. It's not only some things, on all matters. There's nothing too minor. There's nothing too academic. There is nothing too administrative and important that I do not take it to God. It's absolutely important.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. So many leadership lessons here. Do not draw conclusions too early. Okay, wait till you hear the whole story as best as possible. Use people's strength. Get to know your staff. Demonstrate care. Be confidential and trustworthy. Lean on God for wisdom. You're pragmatic. And the first step of being pragmatic is going to God. Wow. And I have to say, it was really a blessing to have worked with you too, because some of these things that you're talking about, I experienced them. They say people remember how you made them feel, right? And I remember how you made me feel as I was working with you. You made me feel like I was capable of doing things. And so that's very good, to let people believe that they can do things. And that was very Amen. Good. So, yeah. So this next question, it might be a little bit challenging simply because there are so many things that you could answer. But I'm going to ask you, could you share your favorite Bible verse or verses? And why?
Well, I think my all-time favorite is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. In fact, I describe it as my mantra. No matter the challenging task. So let me share with you, this idea just popped in my mind, literally, as I say it. When I was in that company, by now you are recognizing that my experience at the Jamaica Conservation and Development Trust was a pivotal time in my life. Because I reference them quite a bit, that experience quite a bit. So here is another one. Because they recognized that I came with a mechanical background, they had a project to build a bridge in a rural farming community. For years, they had this project, and it was just their languishing because it's a development, it's an environmental organization, so building bridge is not their forte. And so I don't know why they felt that my little bit of training in mechanical could manage that project. But they asked me to take it on. And the first thing it meant is that I had to now get the funding. So we had to design that whole thing, the whole project to get that. Now, I like to use the measurements. The bridge is over one of our widest and longest rivers in Jamaica, the Rio Grande River. So it's about 240 feet wide and about 100 or so, not getting the exact figures, high. with gushing water under it. Here am I, a young lady tasked with managing this project. So of course, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I grew up learning to pray, learning to cast all my cares upon him because he cares for me. And so that's the first place I went. I said yes, and I went. And so I wrote the project, and we got funding eventually, skipping out a lot of things. And we don't have enough funding. The funding we got it's not to do anything much, but it gave us the ability to get started. And so I needed workers. Who are the workmen that are going to build this bridge? Now you are 100 and more feet above running water over a river. And so these workers needed to be insured. Where are we going to get as an NGO funds from to insure qualified workmen? That was a laughter. But the wisdom of God came to me. You know that members of the army are trained in many areas. And he brought to my attention that one of the areas was in engineering. And how did I make that connection? I'm certain there were some other things, but what I remember of that is that when I was a student doing mechanical, one of my classmates was a soldier. And he worked in the army, in the mechanical, in engineering unit. So I reached out to them, and that person was no longer in that unit, but the next person I got to was also a graduate of the same program. And so they told me how, and then I met with one of my colleagues, and she said, Shermaine, they're not going to help you because I applied. I asked them and they didn't pay me any mind. Well, show you how God worked. In my cell group at church was a soldier. And I called him and I said, I'm interested in this. And he said, okay, now this is how you do this. In the army, rank is important. So if you're writing to gain access, don't write to the lower rank. Write to the upper rank and let them channel it down. So with that, I was armed and I went in and I wrote to the what do you call him? The major, the brigadier, whoever, whatever the rank was. And then I received a call and said, tell us more about the project. How is it going to affect the community? And I said, A, B, C, D, including helping to open up farmlands, and it was a farming community. All of this was true, and how it would engage the community. And he was impressed by that, said, put it in writing. So I did that, and we got, I would say, a battalion. A battalion, that's the right word, battalion of soldiers, I would say. You know, that's big. So I got soldiers. That's the truth. The soldiers, I got like 20 soldiers were assigned to the task to build this bridge. You know that the army comes insured. Wow. They are already insured. They come with taken care of. Their meals are taken care of. The housing we had to provide for them was just the community center. And I just saw God doing it. Oh my gosh, to get the mechanical parts, I got gray hair. But every part, you would find that God had already aligned me with persons. My year in the industry, in that place where I said I didn't enjoy, I went right back there, sat with the head of the mechanical unit. Well, he was the head of it's his organization. And I sat with them and I said, how do I solve this problem? What do you see? God aligned me to all these people so that when I was ready with this problem, when it came up, I was able to draw on all those skills, those relationships, those persons I had met before. Suffice it to say, or no, I must put this in. We got to the point where we need flooring. And I remember the executive director saying to me, okay, Shermaine, you have done well. We have raised the funding. We now have the rails up. The bridge is, you'll see it going from one side to the next. You can leave it there now. Somebody else can come in and put in the flooring. I said, absolutely not. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And wisdom of God again. And I'll tell you, I won't go into how he did that, but that alone was fantastic. But he had me, every time I sent out to buy parts, to buy material for this thing, he would have me put a cover letter. I'm designing this bridge for this community, and would you give us a discount? I would get 15% discount, 10% discount. And then I just have to say this now. We wanted treated lumber. That's expensive. And I'm telling you, at that time in my country, they were trading out all the wooden lamp posts, that's for street light, to metal. And so the wooden lamp posts were all treated teak, which is the highest quality of lumber that should be used on things like bridges. And I wrote again under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, and they said, come with your power saw and your truck. And I got the people from the community. They came, they sawed away, and we got all the lumber for the flooring. Because I had said to the executive director, I will be one of the first persons to cross this bridge. And so at the end of it, the head of the army flew down, the head of the Canadian Agency for Development came, the head of my organization came, and others in the community and others, and we walked across the bridge. Every time I think about these things, I wonder, how do you do these things, Shermaine?
Yeah.
It is through God who strengthens me. So I don't back off from any challenge. I do not back away from any challenge. Just, I would say to my staff, no, just give me a night to pray. So it is through God who strengthens me.
Yeah, it has to be God. Just the whole process of building a bridge, putting it together, you know, even across that water, that in itself is you know, it's amazing. I don't know if you want to mention how you were trying to figure out how to put the bridge together. So could you just...
That's a part of how God would give you wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And it will point us again to something that I wanted to share and didn't share.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, as the leader, you don't always have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the situation. I felt I am based in Kingston, the city, and I'm managing this project in one of our rural communities.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not even a rural parish like the one I came from. It's more rural. Mm-hmm. And in the interior. So mm-hmm. Here are these people, I don't think they are clicking, you know, so I have to get all the answers before I get to the meetings mm-hmm. each time, because we had a management team comprising several persons from leadership in the community and persons from our parish council in the parish. And we would sit and talk through the project, how we are going to do it. So now here I am, having the soldiers, having the resources, the material, but the soldiers need to go across the water, that's Jamaican. So I will now say, travel across the river to build a bridge. How are they going to do that? In my mind, I cannot see that. How are we going to solve that problem? And an engineer might be listening to me and say, how would you not see that? Well, I was not able to see it. And so we got to this meeting with me coming from the city and all these rural people, and I should have the answer. Well, I didn't have it. And so I got to the meeting and I'm forlorn and I'm sad and I'm trying to hide that I don't know this answer. But then I shared with them, this is where we are and we need to solve this problem. And so one of the men from the community said, well, we need a bucket. And I said quietly to myself, a bucket? How is a bucket going to help us? Because in my mind, a bucket is yay deep, yay wide. How is this going to hold how many men, soldiers, to take them? What is that? That doesn't make sense. But the other members from the parish council says, yes, yes, yes. And we do have a bucket and we could, but it's up in another community and I'm not sure when that project will be done. And so I chimed in and I said, well, maybe we could visit the site and just see how. Why do you think I was doing that? I had not a clue what this bucket looked like, and I wanted to know what the bucket looked like without them knowing that I did not know what this bucket was like. Well, we went and we visited, and I realized this was a big iron frame, heavy enough to be able to hold 4 to 5 men at a time, strapped to the ropes that ran from one side of the bridge to the next. And indeed, it was a bucket because the people are in it and it takes them across. And so I learned a valuable lesson then. Don't think you have all the answers, and don't undermine the thinking of those you are working with. So that's how that one went.
Yeah, and I think that's a timely word of wisdom. And you had kind of alluded to it, drawing on people's strength, and this happened to be their strength. And so we don't always have to have all the answers, and we can draw on the people around us.
Excellent.
Wow. So thanks for elaborating on that verse. I can do all things through Christ, and why? We see why now. So what's your favorite proverb?
Well, that I said, favorite proverb, what will that be? So I just share some of maybe one or two that resonates with me, that stays with me. That is aligned to, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that is Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs 3:5-6, which says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. I have lived that, and I will continue to live that. But Proverbs chapter 4, verse 18 says, the path of the righteous is as the first gleam of dawn, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. And so that has kept me, because sometimes, God doesn't show you the whole picture, and you just have to go in faith. And when you see the door open up, you walk through. And so those are two of the proverbs that really ministered to me and have been very encouraging.
I could see that even that last proverb that you shared, the path of the righteous is as a shining light that groweth more and more into the perfect day, depending on the version of the Bible that you read.
That's right.
But I could see it in your journey. God didn't reveal everything to you immediately, even with building the bridge. You got the workmen. I found it interesting. You had somebody in your class that was a member of the army, and then somebody was able to tell you, oh, this is how you do it. How God just really orchestrated those events. I mean, I won't go through what you said again, but I could see that definitely he had you on a path there. Which I think ties into the next question. Somebody's trying to make a decision. You had many decisions that you had to make during those times and even now. But I imagine that some of these decisions, you have to be choosing among alternatives. And these alternatives are not necessarily a black and white situation where this is right, this is wrong. Which one do we choose?
That's right.
They seem right. There are ways that seem right, right? How do we then discern what to do? How do we make a decision?
You know, one of the things I've learned along the way, and the first time I articulated that was when I was preparing to do a presentation to young leaders at the University of Technology, Jamaica. And as I was preparing, it occurred to me that decisions are grounded in our value system. And so it's important that we understand the things we value. So, for example, I value justice. I really feel that as a leader, I must be just. So a decision in a case of conflict or anything of that nature is that I must deal justly. That's an example of how our decisions are grounded in our values. So a person might you have to make a decision between two jobs. One could make the decision if your value is about making money and keeping up with the Joneses, whoever the Joneses are, or that kind of thing, then you're going to make a decision that way. If you value growth, you value being able to meet your needs, being able to do as the Bible says, that your cup is full and overflow, but you also want to add value to society, then you might make another decision. So I really think it goes back to your value system. But then you also have to be able to clarify the pros and the cons of each of those decisions, the options that are before you. What's the positive here? What's the negative? And of course, you know, if you watch HGTV like me, a lot, you will see that they talk about you're going to buy a house and you look at, it has this, it has that, it has that, and then one house would outdo the other. I believe in all our decisions. We do that consciously or unconsciously. And then the Bible again tells us, in the counsel of many, there is wisdom. So I believe it's important to seek the counsel of others who are like-minded. And I must put that in, because you don't want to walk in the counsel of the ungodly. So it's not just anybody, but it's persons who share your values. And then you seek their counsel. And so those are two or three of the...
Yeah, two. You said you value justice, and in a multitude of counselors, there is wisdom. Yeah. But be careful whose counsel we take. Yes. Thank you. So this is tied to this question as well. How do you tend to deal with challenges? I know we are living in unusual times, and as leaders, we are faced with many unusual challenges. How do you tend to approach challenges when they come?
Well, you know, I think you would hear it throughout prayer. And I'm certain somebody might be listening and say, this academic is talking about prayer. But one of the joys of this academic is that I have learned that my faith in God is not a contradiction to my professional life. In fact, my faith in God gives me strength, gives me confidence, gives me direction, and has enabled me to succeed tremendously. So prayer. is important. And prayer is the first, the middle, and the end of how I approach challenges in life.
Mm.
And then, as I say, when you seek God through prayer, he gives you counsel.
Mhm.
He gives you ideas. And then it is now my task to follow those counsels,
Mhm.
follow those ideas, and to implement what the guidance that I have given. And it might mean, as we just said, talking to people and
Mhm.
finding out those things. But I keep saying to the Lord over and over, I'm not sure how others do it, but I am so glad I have you on my side.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's amazing. Prayer. The power of prayer. Thanks for sharing. Are there any helpful resources that you would recommend for our viewers to review?
There are a number of books that I draw on, but I don't have any one book that I would want to say that you should read this or read that, written by author A or B. But where I have found guidance is in the Bible. And so I would like to offer the Bible as a source of wisdom.
Wow.
Didn't we just looked at some of those? And the
Mhm.
one you just told me, the one from Proverbs 18 or 17 verse 18, which is it? 18 verse 17.
Mhm.
The Bible answers all issues.
Wow.
Yes, academics, the Bible answers all issues. Yes, strong leaders, the
Yeah.
Bible answers all issues. So I
agree.
recommend the Bible.
Yes, I agree. When Jesus was tempted by the devil, he said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceed out of the mouth of God." So it's a command. We can try to live by other things, but we shall not live by bread alone, but by the word of God. So thanks for reminding us to go to the word. Thank you very much.
You're
So
welcome.
you have shared so much wisdom with us today, and I just want to tell you thanks. And I wonder if you could leave our viewers with a call to action, an encouragement, or word of wisdom.
Well, again, I have to go back to some of the things we were talking about a while ago. And I want to say, do not be caught up in the rat race for success. Be ambitious. That's okay. Be ambitious. When somebody described me years ago of being ambitious, I was not pleased because I see ambitious people as not nice, just self-seeking and such. But I've come to know differently. But I still want to say, be careful. And as we said, the path of the righteous
Mhm.
is as the first gleam of dawn,
Mhm.
shining ever brighter to the full light of the day. So remain focused,
Yeah.
be steady, and put in the work. Because as my mother always says, hard work brings true joy, and I believe so. I say to my students, I say to my colleagues, hard work brings true joy. Keep focused, remain steady, do the work, and trust in the Lord with all your hearts, and he will direct your path.
Amen. Well said. Wow, it has been such a great honor to be talking to you after so many years.
Yes,
Thank
indeed.
you. Thank you very much for sharing today. And viewers, she mentioned the Bible as the source for us to look at. And so I would just encourage you to go to the Word of God. The Bible says wisdom is the principal thing, and all that you may desire cannot be compared to it.
That's
And
right.
one way of getting wisdom is going to the Bible. So Professor Barrett, thank you very much for providing such practical words of wisdom to help us along our leadership journey.
Thank you. It was a delight and my pleasure
You're
catching
welcome.
up with you and sharing my experiences.
Yes, you are welcome. And viewers, we thank you for listening to this conversation. But don't just listen to it. We encourage you to share it with others that it will benefit them. And we look forward to seeing you in the next one.